Okay. All right, everybody, welcome to 7 Hacks to Boost Your College Apps in 7 days. It can be done. Uh, so we're going to zip through some content together. Feel free to take notes. Feel free to have something to drink. This is, of course, right before early decision time. So I bet all our minds are cooking with what is the best way to get into our top choices. And we're going to cover all that. But first, let's get to know ourselves. I'm here joined by Steph Shyu, the CEO of Admitsee. Steph, why don't you take a second to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name is Steph. And for those who aren't familiar with Admitsee, though some of you may have come from there, we are a platform of crowdsourced college admissions info, and it's all uploaded by college students themselves, and they're including information such as essays, grades, test scores, extracurriculars, and even their advice. And in a little bit, we'll take a look at some of these profile examples and walk you through some of the actual examples of the tips that we share with you today. So
Great.
excited to be here.
Yay. And my name is Justin Taylor. I am the founder of Wow College Consulting. I am a independent educational consultant for the college admissions process, specializing in admission to top schools. And especially when it comes to the writing, I myself am a writer and got into this kind of work through my writing skills, but love sharing that with people in high school so that your college applications can really stand out and have a strong, coherent narrative that succeeds at top schools like the ones that Steph and I went to. You went to UPenn, right?
Yeah, I went to Penn for law school, and then for undergrad, I did it at Duke.
Oh, cool. Yeah, great. Yeah, I'm a Yale. All right, so the agenda. So we're going to talk about niche majoring, how to do this so that your application is competing with the right people. This is something you can do in very little time in your application process in these 7 days we're going to outline. So the first thing, of course, is what your educational goal is. Then I'm going to go into essay tips and ways to up-level your essays that you've already written. This is not going to be advice on how to start an essay or use different kinds of structures. It's truly just quick ways to not just cross the T's and dot the I's, but like make a few adjustments to really boost your essay. We're going to go over activity list description. So this is a space that most people don't put a lot of attention, but it's still a place where you're writing and you can have a voice. So we're going to talk about how to judge your descriptions, as well as things you can do, one-off things you can do, one-off events to boost your resume. There's a lot of little things that you could try in the week that we're going to outline, as well as how to build a portfolio using your achievements and things you've already done. Then there's this thing I call the coherence test, which is a final check I encourage everyone to do on their Common App before they submit the first school. And then there is a school outreach that I recommend everyone try that can really change the game in admissions. You got to wait till the end for that one. And then, of course, your questions. So let's take it away. When it comes to picking a competitive major, there's kind of two big lanes. One is inside of a university, you have the College of Arts and Sciences, or sometimes it's called the College of Arts and Letters. And then you have these name schools, which are usually an engineering school or computer science school or a business school. And the Wharton School of Business would be a name school like that. These have very different admission rates and admission processes. And if you want to go for a major that will do you a better chance of admission, try to go for a major in the School of Arts and Sciences. Majors in the name schools are going to be even harder to get into. So one quick, easy thing you can do is just look in the College of Arts and Sciences or Arts and Letters at the schools you're looking at and see if there are any majors that fit you. And you can do business and engineering and computer science a lot of times inside of a College of Arts and Sciences. They have majors that are outside of the name schools that are often parallel with the more pre-professional hands-on schools. So an example is the school Cornell. Cornell has 6 colleges in its university, and they all have very different admission rates. For example, the Dyson School of Business has a more stringent admission rate compared to the College of Arts and Sciences. But then there are other schools like the College of Agriculture, which has almost the full slate of sciences that the main College of Arts and Sciences has. CALS is the acronym, and CALS has a more favorable admission rate than the College of Arts and Sciences. And then there's the School of Hospitality, which also has a fairly favorable admission rate. And anyway, the list goes on. So that's just one example. Almost all schools, almost all major universities have these different doorways in, and some are bigger and some are smaller. So do some research and see what looks like the best strategy for you. In terms of majors, I will say just right off the bat, even if it's in the College of Arts and Sciences, computer science, econ, biz, engineering, pre-med, I would actually add psychology. These are the most competitive, the most popular majors. So I recommend staying away from these paths if you want to stay competitive at top schools. So again, something you can do pretty quick in your application is adjust the major you're selecting. Some alternatives, liberal studies, sociology, anthropology, history, math and public health, depending on the school, can also be a good choice. In top schools, these are usually pretty competitive. And I'm going to get into more details about how to get into even more of a niche when it comes to your major in another slide. And then another alternative is, of course, to apply to a less competitive school for some of these meat and potatoes degrees like computer science and econ and biz. So these are the most popular majors, so they're everywhere. They're everywhere. So you can always apply to a lower tier school for those kinds of down the middle majors that a lot of people want. Well, yeah, when it comes to applying at top schools for those, you got to have a certain profile that's full of awards that are national rankings with college level research and this thing I call the wow. I'm not going to go into all of that because we're talking about things you can do in a few days, but just so you know. And so Steph is going to tell us about this one student who found her own niche major. Well, let's hear about this.
Yeah, so on the screen here, you see a student who was accepted and ended up enrolling at UPenn. And she chose a major that Justin just talked about, anthropology and archaeology and language studies and linguistics, which when you think about UPenn, not really necessarily like the majors that you think of, because you're probably thinking Wharton, right? One of the name schools for business, or you're thinking pre-med, or you're thinking pre-law, some of these tracks that really are pre-professional. So if you kind of read a little bit closer, what she puts in her advice section on her profile is that Penn has a reputation for pre-professional studies, but she chose a kind of more niche area of study because of her areas of interest, and it allowed her to connect with sort of non-dominant communities at Penn And she was able to also look to the larger city of Philadelphia as an extension of her college experience. And so toward the end of this advice section, you'll see that she says, she enjoys swing dancing on campus, but I'm also part of a larger dance community in the city. And if you're a pre-professional type, Penn will be great for you. And if you're not, Penn will be great for you too. So essentially, if you're looking at these sort of like top tier schools, as Justin mentioned earlier, looking at some of these lesser known majors that really coincide with your areas of interest. So yeah, I really liked this particular example.
That's great. And I do love that she embraces who she is and isn't afraid to make a bunch of different things overlap. And you would be really surprised, folks, how popular that is in admissions offices. They really jump at students who can present overlapping interests into kind of one package. And she does that here, talking about herself as someone who loves art, but also history and philosophy. And in a way, that was how university was designed back in the day. It wasn't all pre-professional like it is at the top right now. University was truly designed for people to explore and come up with their own path. So it's still a very common way to get admitted is to carve that out for yourself. So I'm going to talk about how to do that. I call this identifying your wow. This is also something you can do within your 7 days. If you've heard me talk about this before, wonderful. You're going to hear it again because this is really, really key to a really strong application. Every student is made of multiple passions, multiple interests, and competitive applications look at the intersection or the overlap of those. I like to say that there are three. The first is an academic interest. So when it comes to picking a major, like I was talking about earlier, one useful way to do that, not just to look at what's strategically going to give you greater admission, but also to look at the interests, the academic interests that overlap in you. Because everyone has more than one, right? So you could, for example, be a marine biology, a lover of marine biology, and also a lover of, I don't know, history. And where could those two things overlap? It could be the history of marine science and the historical scientists being a great passion of yours, or as how was the birth of marine science? Where can we trace that to? That could be a great academic question. So that would be the overlap of those two things. And in terms of a major, when you're writing an application about overlapping interests, you can talk about wanting to be in a couple of departments at the same time. There's a lot of schools that allow for that, like UPenn. UPenn's got a great independent major. And to talk about this in the application is really helpful. And this is something you can do in the College of Arts and Sciences, as I was mentioning earlier. You cannot do this if you're in a named school, unless you're applying for one of those unique programs that combines a named school with the College of Arts and Sciences. Those can also be a way to get into a school or to a named school inside of a university at a slightly more favorable admission rate, but those are still pretty tight. Okay, so then the second passion, I'm sorry, is a civic passion. So I like to think of this as the big, hairy problem you want to impact with your degree. Having something that you articulate in your application about this, really, really, really helpful. And again, in these 7 days, you can't redo your whole application, but you can start to pull out this idea of some major impact you want to make. And especially if it's something from your life, a community that you're a part of, or a community that you are local to. So a community can be a place, right? Your hometown, or it can be a demographic. And when the big hairy problem intersects with you and your life, it really, really helps. So you might think about that as you are putting your final touches together on your application. And the last one is the heart passion, which is something that lights you up and fulfills you. Um, that last woman we heard about has quite a bit of this stuff, um, and it makes her into a dimensional person, which is something else they're looking for in top schools, and something that I think, frankly, one can bring out in an application, even if you only have a few days left, to talk about uh, your passions in these three buckets. I guess you could say it that way. And then when you're looking at your application, doing a once over, I'm going to say this later, you want to see, are you reinforcing these three things across the way you talk about, across your transcript, the way you talk about it, in your resume, and then when you talk about it, and in your essays. That's all I want to say, really. Let's take it to the next person. Let's hear about this woman from Stanford.
Yeah, so in this student's advice, she talks a bit about your summer activities, what to get involved with, but boiling it all down, what I'd like to highlight about this particular profile is that she shares that she chose subjects that she was genuinely interested in, and then she found activities to support that academic passion. For her, it was about STEM focused or STEM areas, and she talks about, like, usually with STEM, you may conduct a ton of research, but you don't necessarily have to do that. You can also look at potentially launching your own initiative, your own startup, or working at nonprofits. So there's really no set of, quote, like right answers, but you can use this as an opportunity to home in on common a common through line in your application. And as we think about these upcoming deadlines, what can you actually do with such a short amount of time? Identifying that through line narrative is something you can make sure that you highlight in your application. So triangulating sort of the academic with the civic and your heart passion, and really making sure that that's highlighted across your essays and your recommendations, and just doing what you can in these next few weeks to pull that all together, to make sure that if that hasn't come across, that you're doing that.
Beautiful. That's beautiful advice. And you'll notice also this student is also doubling up on her academic interests. She has CS in public policy. So that's a really unique mix. And and one could imagine this student has created a little niche for herself by going after her diverse interests, and finding that, oh, public policy could be a really cool way to create an umbrella over all of that, um, and or economics. So I highly recommend, like, Steph was just saying, looking for ways um, to package all the things that you love into a particular story. I'm going to be talking later about this thing called the ethos, but anyway, I'll talk about that later. But look out for that word is what I'm trying to say, because that's one way to get at this singular narrative. I want to also remind everybody of the features in the Zoom. If you have a question, use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom window to type it up, and we will be sure to get to it because we're leaving time for Q&A at the end. So if you have something come up, totally write it down. We will talk to you. All right, so now about your essays. I'm going to give you just a few tips that I think are applicable to all your essays, not just the main Common App essay. So there are a few things that we just want to make sure you are not doing in your application. Because if you are doing these things, I would get rewriting. So the first is using the main essay or a supplemental essay to tell a life story or walk through your resume. That it is not going to hold people's attention. There needs to be a focus to an essay, a topic, and a theme. And when the essays come together, the whole application tells your life story, but not a singular essay. So if you feel like, oh, maybe I've done that, no worries. You can check out some of my other webinars on essay writing that go into great detail about how to craft a strong essay, even an essay that might touch upon a lot of details from your resume or story, something called a patchwork essay. But go look at that, or you can hop into my email and I'll send you the link. Another is the winning game. So that includes sports, that includes chess, that includes the science Olympiad. These are so common that they just get lost in the whole pile. So if you have any essay like that, if your first line starts with, there were 3 seconds to go and I'd sweat going down my brow, like, no, they're going to glaze over, and I don't want that for you. Another really common one is a helping others essay, where helping is like the theme, and the student talks a lot about all the different ways they help people, and it ends up not being memorable. It's great that people help. It's great that you might help. That's a wonderful quality, and schools do look for it. But I find that students commonly talk about it in a way that is not memorable. And so what you do want to do is have a clear story. So again, if this is something that you think, oh, maybe I've done this, shoot me an email, I can take a look. Another one is inspirational quotes. This is perhaps a way to show sophistication, but I do find it can make a student look a little trite, or trying to show that they're sophisticated a little too hard. And the problem also with these kinds of essays is that it turns the essay more into like a critical response essay rather than a personal essay. Personal essay has to be a story about you. So check that one off. And then essays that are all about a metaphor, I tend to also think perform pretty poorly in the admissions process. I don't want to stop anyone from being creative. I'm a writer, okay? Metaphors are in my life all the time as I work on my own work. But when it comes to these applications, getting really attached to a metaphor or a hook and making the essay all about that, and rather than it being about you, I tend to find it doesn't do so well in the admissions process. So what should you do when you have a few days to go and you think, okay, I don't have any of these problems. My structures or my topics aren't falling into any of these 5 buckets that I just named. Number one thing I tell all my clients, show me, don't tell me. There's a lot of explaining in essays that just makes it drown. And I don't want that for you. I want your essay to really float or sail. So show us, don't tell us. Turn every explanation into a little micro scene. Give us examples. That's the way to really communicate through writing in your application. And then the second thing I would say, really important to check, are you showing an evolution in thinking in your essay? It's one thing to show a cool story with great little scenes and examples. How about your perspective on all of that through the essay? There needs to be some kind of learning, a journey of learning, some kind of growth that happens across the essay, even if it's only 250-word supplement. Something gets learned, something gets articulated and concluded. So see if you have that special evolution of perspective. So now we're going to take a look at a student. Oh no, we're going to look at the WOW approach. Also, a little acronym to take with you. I share this all the time. Essays, the really strong ones, do three things really well. They articulate a want of some kind. Usually, this is about learning. It doesn't have to be. Passion is worth gold in the admissions process. So, a strong essay has a strong want. So, I like to think of things that you would do at 4 a.m. Or you would stay up until 4 a.m. or get out of bed at 4 a.m. to learn or do. Those make great subjects for essays. And that's the first W on the wow. The second is, of course, original stories, original voice. So having that cool point of view that is unique to you, getting that out in your essays really, really, really helps. Depth is unique. Depth matters. And I would say the last W here is kind of about that as well. The wisdom piece. Students that reflect out loud in their essays, that literally pose questions in their essays, do better. So look at your essay. Are you speaking in statements the whole way, or are there actual question marks somewhere in the essay? If there are question marks, you're in good shape. If there aren't, turn some of those statements into juicy questions, because when you do that, the reader starts to think with you. When they think with you, they understand how you think, and that's the number one thing they're trying to figure out about the student is are they in fact someone who comes with questions, which is what a student is really. All right, so now let's learn about this student here, Rebecca.
Yeah, I really, really love that last note of bringing out curiosity and like a sense of inquiry. And that's easily something you could do in a really short amount of time.
Yeah,
Uh, yeah, so I chose this particular profile to highlight in this webinar because um, this is a student who uh, really talks about something like not super, it's not a big achievement. It's like quite a mundane part of her life, but like kind of special too. So um, if we read it together, at least the first few sentences, she starts her essay off with, I am a local celebrity to girls ages 4 to 6. Actually, I'm not, but my alter ego, Princess Colette, is. I'm a princess residing at Tea Party Castle. This birthday party venue entertains young girls with a musical tea party. And then she goes on to share kind of her life view, her world view, her values, and how she has stepped into this role to really take on the the role, I guess, of a role model for these younger girls. And I liked this one because it highlights that belief system and helps you as a reader move along with how this person thinks. So yeah, kind of a really simple entry point into how she approaches the world and how she thinks about her place in it. And then the next slide is actually just like a quick, I just wanted to showcase like if you really wanted some quick inspiration or like you already know what you want to write about, on the Admitsee site, there are these packages where we collate profiles based on personal statement topics. So you can kind of go through and pick the one that you think you're already talking about and potentially do a reference check. But we'll breeze through this. This isn't particularly interesting. The next and the last profile I wanted to feature under this section of Justin's wow approach is this. I really loved this essay. It's, you know, if you start reading it, it gives you like the sense of like mystery and like excitement and adventure. It's like, go, go, go. I whispered frantically as we ducked behind the most peculiar of hideaways, hunched underneath a pull-out sofa display. I had gained temporary safety. And it's about these kids, or I guess like young adults, who play a game of hide and seek at IKEA. And it's like a regular occurrence with this guy and his friends. And I really loved this one because, again, it's not really about a particular, it's not the game-winning shot. It's not like overcoming a very specific, like huge, like cliche challenge, or it's not about like helping anybody, but it really showcases his sense of fun and ingenuity and his sense of participation and community. And I like that this essay shows a lot rather than it gives you that, it brings you in with him, like what's happening. And that's another point that you could, in these next week or two, you could easily look at your essay, the structure of it, and start to make some tweaks so that when you're editing it, you make sure you're showing more than telling. This is in addition to that quick tip that Justin shared earlier around like, are you asking enough questions, or are you bringing enough curiosity into your essays? So
Thank you for sharing that. I love that idea for an essay. And you're right, this writing does so much showing. Let's just read a little bit of this. The desolate furniture warehouse with its numerous nooks and crannies served as the perfect setting for our souped up version of hide and seek. You're like right inside it with this character, with this writer. Um, and I don't know where he goes with this, but there's something about improvising rules and coming up with a sense of fun and flow inside of an unusual space. There's a lot of ways that could go as a more thinking essay. So that's really, really great. I love this example. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about activity list descriptions. This is not something that gets a lot of attention in the admissions world. However, this is a huge part of the application that gets read by many, many, many people out of school. And it is a space where you can share a bit of a voice. So here are two versions of the same activity, and tell me which one you think is going to land in the mind and be memorable. So here's a typical version. Head of dance club, reestablished in 2023 by hosting master classes and optional performance opportunities, including for football team. So pretty standard. That would totally fit in the word, the character count and the Common App, just fine. Here's a way with a little, here's one with a little bit of a voice. Revive the school's dance club to share performance opportunities. Highlight convincing half the football team that ballet builds more than muscles, or more than just muscles. So you can hear there's a little bit of a tone, a little bit of a humorous tone to this student in the second version. I like to think of this as like writing little tweets. And one way you can do this or get some help to do this is to use ChatGPT. This is one of the one cases where I think ChatGPT actually is helpful in the college admissions process. You can also use ChatGPT, like we said, to look at your essay, run it through ChatGPT to see if there's any opportunities to turn a sentence into a question or stuff like this. But most ChatGPTs aren't trained to read essays in a deep way. But you could ask it, can you help me find a funnier, wittier way to say this little description? That could give you some ideas and to help you do it with a little less, a little more quickly is what I mean. All right, so again, we're just giving little tips here, folks. The resume. So you have a week or two until your early decision deadline. Is there honestly anything one could do to boost the resume at this point? The answer is yes. There are a few ways, and I've had students do this. So one is to give a one-off discussion event at your school. Let's say there's something you're really eager to bring front and center in your application. and you want a little more meat in your resume for this, you could invite your friends to have a theme discussion at school about this and take notes on it and talk about it in your application, or have a little blurb about it in your additional info section in your application, or even add it to your resume if you want as a line. I've had many students who couldn't form a club do this instead, a one-off discussion event. So a light lift, and you can do it with your friends and then talk about it in your application. But do take notes so that you can substantively discuss it in your application if you end up doing that. The second thing is to write a quick op-ed. So an op-ed's an opinion piece. Opinion pieces, you don't need to do a ton of research, although a little bit of research would be great for an opinion piece. And not as time consuming as like a big research paper. And get it published somewhere. Get it published in the school online journal or a local news site. Because what you want to be able to do is link to it in your application. It's one thing to say you got a piece up somewhere. It's another thing to link to it and have your readers in the admissions process be able to go click the link and check it out. That's what's really important, is that it's clickable and they can go check it out. So is there an issue that matters to you that you're talking about in your application? Let's say, for example, you were this marine biology history student. Is there something happening in your local community around the marine life or marine ecology stewardship that you're curious about or that you have an opinion about? You could write about it for your school or for a local paper. And a lot of places that are local are looking for writers. So you might find you're very welcome with a quick turnaround. A sort of offshoot of that is number 4. So every town has public town halls where locals can bring in an issue they want heard. And one way that students have supplemented their resume for college is to actually go to their town hall, and instead of getting something published in an op-ed, they go and they talk about the town hall and be like, I'm concerned about blank in our community and I want you all to know about it. And when you do that, what happens is the city hall or the town hall has someone who's taking minutes, a secretary who's taking minutes, and those minutes get published. They're made public. And guess what? You can click a link. You can make a link out of that and share that in your application. So showing that you show up at town halls to talk about XYZ, really nice little boost. And again, that's something that you might find is available to do in the next 2 weeks. So you could go and be a speaker at your open town hall. And again, you don't have to be specially invited. It's open to, these are open to the public. It's Quaker style. Like there's a space for the public to come and speak on the mic and share something. The last thing I'll share here is pretty obvious. Shadow a professional for a day. So a lot of students can add to their resume really, really quickly by just doing a quick day following somebody at their line of work. So again, thinking about a town hall, you could follow around a mayor for a day. Some towns let you do that. Or follow someone else in your local government for a day if that's something of interest to you. If you're interested in policy, for example. Or if you are interested in business, following around someone who operates a business. Anyway, the sky's the limit here, but someone professional, and then write about it in your application. I highly recommend that. It can make you sound like you know what you're doing. It can make you sound like you're really invested in what you are applying to study. All right, so that's about the resume. there's another side to the application that gets very little attention, but when it comes to the top tier schools, this is actually fairly important, which is your portfolio. And I think moving forward in admissions in the future, the portfolio is going to become a more and more important element of the application because it cannot be generated by AI. The portfolio cannot be generated by AI because it's full of evidence of your work. That's what the portfolio is used for. This is not an element that is required. This is an element that is unique to every school that you apply to. So you would use the portfolio platform of the school to send these materials. So what could go into this? Performance videos. Even if you are not applying to be a performance major at a school, lots of universities like to see the student is well-rounded and is invested in something. Like I said, the heart passion piece. So if you have a strong passion in the arts, piano, dance, you name it, ceramics, and you're not going to be studying that in school, but you might be joining the school symphony or joining a club that does dance or joining the school pottery group. Share your work. Share your work. It's really, really helpful. It really helps you look dimensional. And you are dimensional, right? So performance videos, research abstracts, really, 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 really helpful, especially if you're a STEM student. Get these into the portfolio. Some schools directly ask for them in a formatted way, so you would want to use their formatting process. But a lot of schools don't directly ask for research abstracts. I do recommend doing it. This could be abstracts for a research paper. I would say a term paper, so end of year, fully annotated research paper would be a great thing to add. You could even upload the whole thing. They probably won't read it, but at least the abstract as an academic sample, really, really great. And again, you don't have to go and make this thing out of thin air. This is all stuff you already have. So how to leverage stuff you already have to supplement your portfolio. And then, of course, if you're a STEM student, lab research abstracts, great. If you're part of a scientific study, even if it's not published, it's okay if it's in process. Get the abstract that the lab is using, the institution is using, put it into your portfolio. And you could even add to it, putting a little blurb about your responsibility. That's really, really, really helpful. A third thing is a character letter. So you have your academic recommenders that are a part of your main Common App application. These are required, but nothing stops you from adding another letter or even maybe 2 additional letters. I wouldn't go too far. At least one's okay. 2 might be all right as well, depending on your profile. But this would not be an academic letter or an academic recommender. This would be what we call a character letter. So this would be from somebody who knows you well, who's probably not from your high school. They could be a coach from a club team that you're a part of. It could be a dance teacher that has known you for a long time, or another arts trainer or teacher. It could be someone that oversaw an internship that you had. These folks can speak to your character, as well as someone who might have had some responsibility in your performance in that role, which is different from someone who's learning in a classroom. These are really, really helpful because guess what? At university, you're not just in a classroom all the time. You're a part of a community. You have responsibilities like you might have right now outside of school. So I really recommend getting that together. That might take more than 7 days to get, but something I recommend getting together if you have the space, and the recommender does as well. And then along with research abstracts, presentations, so slideshows, screenshots of websites you've built that are presenting research you've done. I have lots of students who share that as well in the portfolio. All right, I think I've said enough there. Let's learn about some folks who have done some of this.
Yeah, I'll breeze through these really quickly. I just wanted to highlight there are 4 students here who have a combination of either portfolios or kind of like boosted their resume. And this first student who attended UC Berkeley, she submitted an art portfolio where it highlighted her graphic and web design. And then this second student who attended Brown included, obviously they had their resume, but they included an additional recommendation by their senior project mentor. And then the next student who attended Tufts, they actually, interestingly, their additional materials was an email to the admissions officer, and they put it in parentheses here, but like very politely, non-intrusively, where they continue to indicate their interest. And this last student who attended Stanford, they included a creative writing supplement because that was an area of interest for them. So just some examples of what you can include even at this stage.
Yeah, yeah. So dig into those files, dig through all 4 years of high school is a place to look for this stuff. Of course, the most recent is the most useful because that's the person they're wanting to admit, is the you that's standing here today, sitting here today. But yeah, great examples. All right, so just a couple more things. The coherence check. So this is something I recommend everyone do at the end of the process. Export the PDF of your Common App before you submit that for school. You can catch a lot of things you didn't think were in there that might be needing a change when it's exported as a PDF. And I recommend sharing it with knowing adults, meaning adults that understand a little bit about the admissions process. So it might be your parents, it might be a counselor at school, it might be a relative. And you want to ask yourselves, does the narrative of this application cohere? Meaning, like, if you read it like a book, is there a singular narrative to it that holds? Are there any tangents that go off that don't really fit? Are there any pieces missing? Are there holes? One way to check for this is to create this ethos statement. So I mentioned that earlier. We were talking about creating a narrative across the application. And here's a short phrase you can use to make this ethos statement. And then you would fill in the blanks. I've always loved blank niche subject. So let's say marine biology. But it wasn't until blank specific activity, we could say a history bowl competition, that I learned new important perspective on marine biology. So maybe this person discovered that the study of marine biology has its roots in another kind of science, and that history is a series of perspectives and narratives that can weed out or exclude certain pieces of information or levels of information. And so their mind's blown about how marine biology is more complex than just studying whales. So that, I think, can really help you to get at what is the overall narrative you're trying to communicate. So if your application can fit under this one sentence, as if it were like a headline or a summary, you're in good shape. All right. So let's hear about this. Yes, political science student.
Yeah, I particularly liked this person's advice because let me actually like bring you to the spot where they talk about it. But yeah, essentially that second sentence, I didn't hunt for positions or canned experiences. For example, in freshman year, I was one of the only boys in a dance club. I was offered an officer position the following year. I turned it down even though that likely would have led me to be president of the club by junior year because the club wasn't that interesting to me. And they talk a little bit more about what else they spend time on, and then end with, don't focus on perfecting each of your individual application materials, but make sure they fit together perfectly too. And what I liked about this particular student is that, they didn't hunt for activities and titles, but they really focused on their contributions to the group or organization. When Justin and I were looking at this profile earlier, we talked about how, even though he didn't have an officer position, he still took on a really unique role in the group where he was the only boy on the dance team or in the dance group. And so remember that you can demonstrate leadership without holding leadership titles. And that's something that you can also highlight in your application.
Hmm.
In addition to thinking about, like, obviously the coherence piece of it. So really making sure that the different parts of your application fit together. It tells a really coherent story about who you are. And then,
Yeah, yeah, I
mhm,
love that. And this kid obviously uh, is naming in a way a kind of theme to their profile here by saying, I don't just go after titles, I go after what is of value to my life.
mhm,
And that could be a whole philosophy of learning that drives their application. Anyway,
totally.
yeah.
And then these two quick examples are two people who talked about using an adult in their life or adults in their lives for a coherence check. So Raphael here asked his relatives, and the second student, RS, received really good advice to have someone look over your application to determine whether or not it sounds like you, because there's maybe a part of, like, a key part of who you are that someone actually notices and can bring out. Can highlight for you that you may not see yourself, or you may have missed in your application somehow.
Wonderful. I love all these success stories. It's really great. All right, last piece I was promising you was the demonstrated interest approach. There's a lot of talk about this, but there's really only one thing that makes a difference. Um, Top schools don't track demonstrated interest. Other schools that are private do track that, which means every time you interact with the admissions office, it's put into a file and tracked. It has to do with this thing called yield. They want to say yes to students that are really eager, and so demonstrated interest helps them say yes to those students. But most top schools don't do this. Um, Often people think like, oh, when I know somebody in the admissions office or my family is friends with the president of the school, that could help me get in. None of that is true. I've seen that, literally seen that not work. I had a client last year whose mother was friends with the president of Columbia and arranged all these phone interviews for her daughter with the president of Columbia. It did not get her in. Did not get her in. So just want you to know that that is not so, there's not some shadow door in like that. So what does matter? In-person contact with an admissions representative. That's what matters. More than even a Zoom. Zooms are great. A Zoom webinar where you can get on camera and introduce yourself, make that connection. That does matter. But even better is in person. So if there's an admissions info event in your area, if they're traveling around like they are right now, usually, there's something in October in your area, usually, because that's what they do. Uh, Go in person and make a personal introduction to the admissions officer for your region, or even if the dean is in the info session, introduce yourself to the dean. These kinds of personal self-introductions I have actually seen change a student's admissions journey because the officer is talking about that student later on in the process, and then they're like, "Oh no, don't reject that one. I met them. They have this great personality. We really gotta get that one in." Um, it it we're all human beings, and so the human thing it really matters. You can also do some outreach to professors and current students and talk about that in your application if you feel like that would be of use to you. It's always good to do. That is not demonstrated interest that would be tracked by a school, but it helps legitimize your interest when you talk about it. There's this last thing that it might be a little late at this point if you're applying ED, but you never know, which is applying as a walk-on for an athletic team. This is not being a recruited athlete. This is something else entirely. Essentially, universities have a policy that every team that they have, every team that is competitive at their school, is competing with other schools, must hold tryouts for the entire student population. It's just a usual policy at a university, and that's called the walk-on tryout. And some schools allow applicants to get on the list for walk-on before they're admitted. So they can apply as a walk-on athlete who has been allowed to try out. Or in a way, you could say, the coach has agreed, yeah, I want this person to try out and to be on our alternate string team. So emailing the head coach, the assistant coach of a team is a way to get the information on that. I have seen that be successful. This is really only for students who have very strong athletic credentials. However, it's not for just like, I liked badminton in high school. I'm going to try to be on the walk-on list for the badminton team. You have to have had national play, national competition, not just you like the sport. So that's a small little sliver of people maybe listening, but add it just in case. All right, so that rounds it up. Oh, no, let's hear about this from some real cases, some demonstrated interest cases.
Yeah, I'll also breeze through this because I know we're already a bit over time, even though we started late. So I assume we're going to have some time at the end for questions. But yeah, this first person talks about demonstrated interest, about visiting the schools. But I think like what's more important is what Justin shared earlier about making sure that you have someone advocating for you. So the second person who ended up attending Yale said that the admissions officer, he got to meet, he and his family got to meet, and the admissions officer was pitching their application very strongly to the committee. So you want to make sure you, if you do this, you have someone who's advocating for you. And then the last little piece that's not on here because I didn't put my own profile on here is that I actually myself was a walk-on athlete. So I was, I played sports at like a national level. I was a junior Olympic athlete, ended up talking to the coach. And so that was also a nice bonus for my application. So success story in
Yeah, great. I love that. I had a walk-on applicant last year get into her top choice because she got the yes from the coach at Brown. Anyway, simple strategies that can possibly be pretty quick. All right, so just a quick rundown of what I do. I am, again, an independent educational consultant. I do one-on-one application coaching and essay review. So if you're someone who would like that for your process, I still have some space this season if you'd like that. I'm also offering this thing called the Early Decision Accelerator, where I'm taking students through 7 days of full uplift boosting of the application, from the essays to the resumes to the activity descriptions, you name it. I'm giving everything a tune-up. And that's 10% off until Friday. So if you are feeling really stressed, you want some outside support to get things done at a higher level, I do have some room for you. And let's hear about what Admitsee's got going on.
Yeah, so if you're not already an Admitsee subscriber, What we're offering with this webinar is $25 off of class of 2025 and 2026 plans. I don't imagine there are many of you here who are class of 2026 since this is a last minute kind of webinar, but available for both. And so what those plans give you is like a certain number of unlocks. Class of 2025 gives you 20 unlocks, and you get to search through our entire database for profiles of students who might be similar to you. So you can read their full personal statements. You can see students that were accepted and enrolled. So it might be people who got accepted but didn't end up choosing to go to those schools, but still got accepted with certain characteristics. And you can also unlock packages of essays, as I mentioned in one of the slides earlier. And we have this really interesting data insights page as well that's like fully open if you buy one of the class of plans. And then just like a quick note on that, what that means is if you're a class of 2025, it means you purchase now, you have either now or later, 3 months later, you have access through June 30th of 2025 or June 30th of 2026. The idea is to help you through the entire school year and admissions cycle. And I have a quick little chart on the next slide. So that's the plan, $25 off of that plan for access to 20 profiles. And then that little data insights screenshot that I took is showing the majors that are most popular based on students on our site who were accepted to Cornell. So you can use the code WOW25 off, and that expires on November 15th. So essentially in 30 days. So hopefully you get all of your stuff done by then. And if not, there's also a regular decision, but we'll still be here if you need help with that. Yeah.
Okay, so now we've gotten to the end. Okay, how do I, hold on. Okay, great. So let's talk, oh, we're at the end. Okay, great. So let's talk about Q&A.
Yeah, any questions?
Let's get into the Q&A.
I don't think
Hey,
I
guys,
saw any pop up, but yeah, happy to answer any questions.
yeah, throw those into the Q&A feature, folks, if you'd like to yeah, get some live data dump for your application, your specific case. Well, maybe I'll start with a question for you, Steph. I mean, I know your college admissions journey as many years ago as mine was.
Many.
So you started out, you said at Duke, and then you did Penn.
Yeah, so I ended up going to law school for Penn, where I started working on the idea for Admitsee. And a big part of the reason I started working on this was because I was like, why can't I see real examples of students who gone through this process or who've needed to write very specific essays. So for example, I took time off from college for like mental health reasons and for a couple other reasons. And if you interrupted your studies when you apply to grad school, you have to talk about that. Like what happened? Like, why is there a gap? And I was like,
Mm,
there are no like, how do you talk about that? Like, what do you say?
mm,
Is it like a personal statement, or do you like answer directly that question that's posed to you? And so that was kind of the impetus of the website, and why I thought it would be really useful to sort of crowdsource some of this information to find students that were actually similar to myself. So
mm.
uh, I don't know if that's actually what you were asking, but
No, I love it was in a way I was curious about um how yeah, the birth of this project. I love it because transparency is one of the least available things in the admissions space.
Mhm.
There's a lot of secrecy, and I hope that today's webinar has changed a little bit of that for those of us who are watching and trying to pull back the curtain. I I also want to make a plug here uh, for folks that have a mental health journey in their biography already. Um, for what Stephanie was alluding to here, which is that it's not taboo, it's not wrong to talk about this in your application. Um, However, it is important to talk about it in a way that's useful to admissions and to the admissions process. A lot of students approach a mental health journey or hardship in an application as like a challenge story that they want to center in an essay. And what I recommend you do with that, folks, if that's your case, is not to focus on the challenge, but to focus on the resurrection. Make it a triumph story, not a challenge story. Because what they want to know is who is the person they're admitting, and if the health story is not in the rearview mirror, it's going to raise a red flag. I don't want that for anybody who's watching this. So, not necessary to talk about it if that's what you would prefer. You don't have to talk about it. If it does impact your grades, I would say it's important to have something in your additional information section about that period. And again, you want to make the focus what you've done about it and how you are at a place of health and maybe even helping others. So, in a mental health journey, like any healing journey, you go from hurting to healing to helping. And the best is the helping. And so, Steph's created Admitsee as her helping phase. And I love that. So I don't want to spend too much time drawing out our webinar because we are over a little bit. But I do thank everybody for your attention. And if you do have questions, you can email us both. You'll get the recording for this later in your email, so you can always reply there and reach back out if you have any questions. Steph, anything else you want to say before we go?
I think I just want to say, it can feel like a really daunting process. And especially if you're like coming right up to the deadlines and the end, a lot of times you like start questioning, like, what should I be doing? And that kind of thing. But I think really like focusing on what it is that you want to say and what your story is and how you can highlight those pieces using a lot of the tips that we shared today. I think, yeah, just staying focused on that, managing your deadlines, which is really difficult. I know while you're still balancing school and extracurriculars and a social life and all those things, but you could work with someone like Justin. You can also really, at least in these next few weeks, just yeah, I think like highlighting what makes you you and have someone take a look at it, whether it's an adult in your life or someone like Justin. So yeah, just want to say good luck, and I get it. It can be a really tough time, but once you're over the hump, like I hope that's it's also the first stepping stone to the rest of your academic journey, right? Like it doesn't end once you get into college. You then get to discover more, like what do you get to do next? So I think thinking of it in that way hopefully will help with some of the mental health, the mental wellness piece of it at this point in your journey.
Yeah, I fully support that point of view there, folks. Your mental well-being is not worth sacrificing to get into a school, take care of yourselves out there. And again, getting support and help is one great way to lower that stress and support your mental well-being so you can focus on getting good grades. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you for the attention and see you later.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.